Welcome to the Chronicles of the Great North. Episode 4: The Inspection. Last time, a name reached the north before the person behind it. A young heiress left the comfort of the south behind and set her course toward the edge of the map, where the river is a road, and every mile asks something in return. The journey began in New Fork and carried her north in a trail of smoke and steel into a country that doesn't care for headlines. By the time she reached Nuggetville, the town was already watching, quietly measuring what her presence might mean. She found warmth in the windows of the IRON Mug Saloon, where music and laughter kept the dark at bay. And in the harbor streets, she crossed paths with Walter and his small companion, Peanut, an encounter brief enough to seem ordinary and lasting enough to linger. That night, she took a room far from the noise, listening as the town slowly settled into silence. The river kept moving. The lanterns burned low, and somewhere beyond the last lights, the gold claims slept beneath a cold, watchful sky. Daybreak arrives whether you're ready or not, and with it, the real work begins. This time, it begins with an inspection. Up here, the story doesn't pause. It simply changes pace. May had come to the north at last. The sun was kinder, the days a little longer, but snow still held its ground in the shade, and the nights still carried frost. Walter woke with the cold in his breath and the promise of work in his hands. Peanut was already ready for the day. There was no shortcut to gold, only routine. Dig the pay dirt, break it down, sift the stones, add water a little at a time, and watch where it goes. Up here, even the earth could shift under your boots. Mud slid away. The heavy sand stayed. The world narrowed to sound and rhythm. Wood, water, gravel. And when the day's effort finally came to its end, Walter opened the riffles and gathered what the current couldn't steal. A few careful turns of the pan, and there it was. Not a fortune, just proof. Enough to tuck away in a small leather pouch and keep going. In town, the saloon's warmth had faded into routine. Victoria and Eddie were already dressed for work. Paper, ink, and purpose packed tight behind calm faces. Outside, Nuggetville stirred under a kinder May sun. Snow still lingered in the shadows, and the ground was soft with thaw, but the day carried the feeling of motion, of something beginning. They walked straight past the town's waking streets and toward the riverbank, where Great North's plans were already taking shape. The warehouse rose where the shoreline still wanted to be a shoreline. Timber and ambition planted in a ground that hadn't finished deciding what it was. Victoria and Eddie stopped at the edge of it, measuring more than beams and posts. They were measuring intent. And intent here had a name. Javier was one of 3 of the company's hard men. Born on the borderlands, raised around railroad camps where discipline meant survival and silence meant staying alive. He learned early that orders weren't suggestions. They were what kept people breathing. Great North recruited him young, and he rose from guard to security chief through loyalty, control, and an unbroken chain of difficult decisions. He'd seen sabotage, murder, corruption, frontier justice done wrong often enough to harden a person for good. They said he carried a weapon beneath his coat. He didn't need to show it. Now Nuggetville was his assignment. Protect the northern expansion, keep workers safe, and keep the company's interests intact. He spoke only when he had to, and when he did, every word landed like a nail set straight. In the north, hope was easy to find, People built it with their hands. But possibility, that was the part companies came to claim. Victoria asked the practical questions. Javier gave the company answers.
According to the map, this should be further upriver, on firmer ground. And if the town already has a harbor, why not use it?
Reginald wanted it here. He says it's cheaper to build it now than to rebuild it later.
And what about the harbor?
The town's harbor isn't ours. My job isn't to question it, it's to keep it standing. Miss Silverstorm, if you'll excuse me, I have work to see to.
Victoria didn't need more answers. She needed room to change them, and there wasn't any. At least not here. Not with the warehouse. The decision had been made before she arrived, stamped into wet ground and rising timber. So what was left wasn't power. It was responsibility. Because if this failed, it wouldn't be Reginald's name people remembered. It would be the company's. And the company now spoke with her voice. Victoria looked past the private dock and the steel certainty of Borealis and back to the town harbor. That was the lifeline. Food, tools, materials, mail, the quiet traffic that kept Nuggetville breathing. Using it would have been the smart move, for business, for peace, for trust. But Great North hadn't come north to share a harbor. It had come north to own one. The next morning, the warehouse stood exactly where it had the day before. Timber rising where the shoreline still wanted to be shoreline. What had once been a simple stretch of riverbank. Boats tied, nets dried, lives moving quietly along the water, was now posts, ropes, and company orders. 2 fishermen came looking for answers. Men who had tied their boats to this stretch of riverbank for years. They found a guard instead. And at that same moment, Walter and Peanut were in town as well, moving through the harbor streets like they belonged to the everyday rhythm, until the raised voices pulled them toward the water. Walter meant only to pass through, but he found himself witnessing something larger than a simple argument. No shots were fired, no fists yet raised, but something had shifted all the same. The river had always been enough. Now, even the river was being measured. And for the first time, people began to ask a new kind of question. Who, exactly, was meant to keep the peace here? As the day drew to a close, the conflict was plain enough. Not just at the shoreline, but between a company's reach and a community's right to remain itself. In the dim warmth of the Iron Mug Saloon, the talk turned to what comes next. Not anger alone, but the question of order, of someone local, someone trusted, meant to uphold the law and keep the peace when paper and land no longer agreed. Lanterns burned low, voices softened, and slowly, night settled over Nuggetville as the town held its breath and listened. When people stop watching the North begins to watch back.